It's time to talk divisional matchup up in Buffalo. Joe Burrow and the Bengals looking to go back to the AFC Championship game
and beat them Buffaloes.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals. We have you covered every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. So hit the subscribe button on YouTube, hit the follow button anywhere you get your audio podcasts, and join the First Listen Club. I get a lot of messages these days about people in the First Listen Club, and I love every single one of them. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, who will help you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Well, James, it's time. Divisional preview. This time last year, we were talking about a trip to Tennessee, the number 1 seed coming off a bye for the right to go play in the AFC Championship game, probably against Kansas City. This year, different opponent. Oh, I guess last year was a little bit more of a question because it was Buffalo, Kansas City in the divisional round last year. This year, the Bengals have the honor and privilege of being the team that would have to face Buffalo and Kansas City, likely, if they can win this week. And, my feelings about this matchup haven't changed a ton from the last time these two teams are going to meet in Cincinnati. Obviously, the team for the Bengals is a little bit different. They've lost offensive linemen since then. Alex Kappa and Jonah Williams will not be playing this week. But my feeling is still pretty similar, James.
Mm-hmm. I don't blame you. Because as important as Jonah Williams or Alex Kappa are, I certainly expect, not believe, not hope, not any of those, expect, I want to be clear about that word, this Bengals offense to be not only functional, but be able to go out and execute what they need to execute and what they plan on doing. And I think that it's easy to look at it and say, man, down 3 linemen and all of those things. But one, they did it last year with a line that was worse than this group. I believe that. I think that, okay, Akeem Adeniji, well, it's the same guy, right? Well, he has all of that experience, and I think he's played better at tackle than he did at guard last year. I think that's fair to say. Max Sharping is better than Akeem Adeniji was at right guard. And yeah, left tackle, that's the question mark of the year, no doubt. But guess who else is better? And maybe you say Jackson Carman's better, but I'm not going there. Joe Burrow is better and understands that, when to take risks, when not to, when to get rid of the ball, when not to, much better than he did going into that Tennessee game where he was confused, I think, and certainly got rattled some, and rightfully so, because this Bengals offensive line didn't deliver the 9 sacks we know about. We've talked about ad nauseum, but they overcame it. I don't think they're going to give up 9 sacks on Sunday. I think that they'll be able to hold their own and that this offense is going to play at a pretty high level. And if they do that, Jake Liscow, they have a real good shot, despite what some former all-pro safeties have said on various shows, including Kay Adams's lovely program.
That was quite an interview, wasn't it?
It's a joke.
You don't need to talk about it too much.
It was a joke because you knew like Kay was one. I get it; she likes the Bengals a lot, but she was also right in her points.
Yep.
Like this idea that the Bengals are just going to get rolled and can't block it. Have you watched them? They've had offensive line issues on and off for Joe Burrow's entire career, and mostly on. And they've found ways to overcome it the past 2 years. So,
and Eric Weddle played against them in a game that was on a razor's edge from him losing with the same matchups.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of similarities to that Rams matchup in that you've got a turnover-prone quarterback on the other side. You've got a concern in the trenches if you're the Bengals offense.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no Jalen Ramsey. Tre'Davious White isn't Jalen Ramsey. He's a really good player. He's coming off an injury. He's not Jalen Ramsey. There's good safeties. But there's no Aaron Donald.
There's no Aaron Donald. There's no Von Miller. Think
Yeah.
about that. They had to
Both
deal
of
with
those
both
guys.
of those guys. Yes. And that's the difference. That's why I expect this offense to put up points and move up and down the field. Not every possession,
Mhm.
but a lot of the possessions. I think that they can be a really good offense, regardless of the elements, regardless of the noise, all of those things. Because if one of these guys gets beat, well, Burrow can deal with that and be okay. And this idea that they're not going to function, and that's what Weddle said, and I don't think every analyst thinks that one stands out because he was so absolute about it.
He might be a little bitter.
Maybe because they beat the Ravens, and he said the Ravens were whatever. The point is, I think that Burrow will be able to hide some of that, which we've seen throughout his career, maybe hide more of it than we've noticed. And I expect them to throw the ball really all over the field. We'll see if that happens, but I would not be shocked at all if you're seeing Chase short, Chase long, T. Higgins short, T. Higgins long, Boyd over the middle, Hayden Hurst. I think that they're going to try to do a lot of what they tried to do against the Bills that first time. The difference might be that the Bills might learn that they shouldn't blitz Joe Burrow much, because they did do that on that first drive a little bit, and that didn't work out.
Yeah, and we didn't get to see what Leslie Frazier's adjustments would have been. This is a talking point for Bills fans, but also there's probably some truth to it, right? We've seen Lou Anarumo's defense all year find those in-game adjustments, especially against really good quarterbacks. And we'll talk about the defense as well. But Leslie Frazier, a very capable defensive coordinator for Buffalo as well, would have certainly had adjustments after it looked like he was on his way to giving up 2 straight scoring drives to start that game. But they're just so substantial differences in the way the Bills play defense and the way the Ravens play defense in terms of the personnel on each side that, yes, I think the Bills are a good defensive unit. I don't think they create the matchup problems or match up as well as the Ravens did with the Bengals from a schematic perspective, from a personnel perspective. The Ravens, yes, they had their questions in their secondary, but really good team speed on that defense overall, and a solid secondary across the board, especially with Kyle Hamilton finding his footing as a slot corner. And he played well. He played well in both of those games for the Ravens. They have good safeties. They have Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters, for as much of a pain in the butt as he is, and as much of a prick as he is, made plays. And I know that he there's a punch in the head for T. Higgins that wasn't called. I don't say that to I say that because of the way he acted on the field, right? Like, he instigates, right? He's getting in people's faces. He talks a lot of trash. That's just the kind of player he is, right?
Sure.
On the football field. That's all I
I
mean.
get. I know. I get what you're saying.
But Tre'Davious White, good player, good players on the Buffalo defense, but different scheme. And yeah, it's a question of, are they going to have that discipline to never blitz? Are they going to want to test Jackson Carman by sending some extra pressures? And the thing you talked with Joe about yesterday on the crossover, James, the Bills haven't been able to capitalize on these moments when they've had opportunities to go against backups. And maybe this is the week that they capitalize, right? You never say never in football. Maybe this is a week with 3 linemen down, 2 tackles, right? Backup tackles on both sides, including one who hasn't played the position really since Clemson, assuming that Jackson Carman is a starter, which is our current operating assumption at left tackle. Yeah. But they don't have those world beaters, right? And so if Joe Burrow is playing in a way that he's able to diagnose quickly, the Bills don't create those diagnostic problems the way the Ravens do for Joe Burrow, where he's going to pull down a pre-snap read that he wants to throw a slant and then has to turf one over the middle on his check down because he was surprised by something. Shouldn't see that as much in this matchup. And to me, it seems like one where the Bengals skill guys should get back to that level, right? Where we haven't seen it as much. Outside of that Bills game, the start of that Bills game, this would be the game for them to get back and hit their stride again and rise up to the moment like they have for the most part in Zach Taylor's tenure. The last 2 years anyway.
Let's shelf that because I want to talk about the skill guys. I want to talk about the wide receivers, and we got to get to the defense too, because everyone's talking about the Bengals offensive line. The Bills have an offensive line as well, and we should discuss that among other things. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 depends on team members you surround yourself with. Joe Burrow surrounding himself with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because the Bengals, how they drafted those guys is with LinkedIn Jobs. All right, maybe I'm joking a little bit, but LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your jobs and job openings with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find the quality candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Before we get to those skill guys, James, just want to make one last note about the offensive line here before we get out of that conversation. The last time I talked about them was with Mike. We were talking about how Jackson Carman played and how the new guys on the right side of the offensive line played. But specifically, there's been a lot of focus on Jackson Carman this week. And when I talked to Mike about this, we talked about how the offense had a very clear and visible change in approach against the Ravens down the stretch in that game.
Yeah.
They, the 3-step drops were even cut back, a lot of quick game. The Bengals probably need to get back to some true 3-step drops, some 5-step drops, and mix those into the arsenal. Carman will have to hold up in those situations, and all you can do is hope that these guys step up and make the most of their opportunities. The Bills are going to attack it. They're going to find ways to try to move guys the way that Baltimore moved guys right before the snap, specifically Calais Campbell, and there's no Calais Campbell on the other side, although Ed Oliver is a good player. He's not Calais Campbell with his old man strength. So there's opportunity, and I say that with the utmost respect. Calais Campbell had a monster game. The Bengals offensive line here has an opportunity to do enough, right? Where maybe they give up a few sacks, a few hits. Maybe Joe Burrow has to extend a few plays. But I think they at least are going to try to run their full offense until it's proven to them that they can.
Yeah.
And, even with those guys against the Ravens defense, the point, I wish I remember who pointed it out now, but I saw a tweet about this, and I'm sorry if you're listening and I'm not crediting you, but from a points per drive perspective, 17 offensive points for the Bengals on 7 drives against the Ravens. The Bills had 30 offensive points on 16 drives, 31 offensive points on 16 drives, I believe, against the Dolphins. On a points per drive basis, where's the difference?
Yep.
Bengals might actually be a little bit more efficient there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they would be if you break it down that way. First things first. Yeah, they're going to run their offense. And you're right. They could scale it back if needed and adjust if needed. And obviously they will probably adjust. Not everything goes your way, goes well. But I think the big difference and the thing I like the most is you're not going to be so limited possessions wise. I mean, 7 possessions, that sucks.
Yeah.
And the Ravens were able to carry that out, and it just makes it tough. And that won't be the case. In fact, I'll just leave it at that. That's not going to be the case on Sunday. And so you're right in getting to the skill guys, because offensive line wise, it is a question mark, and that margin is different. Margin for error is much different than it was. These guys got to win. Jamar Chase has to be the best receiver on the field. T. Higgins has to be. Does he need to outplay Stephon Diggs? I don't know. But he needs to walk on the field and be playing like it. And it really just depends on where the ball goes. But those are the 2 guys that just – there was a comparison on Twitter somewhere. It was like, who would you take, Jamar and T, or Diggs and Gabe Davis? And it's not close. It's really not. And the Bills would say the same thing if you gave them truth serum. It is not close. You could say Stephon Diggs and Jamar are close, and that's fine. But from an age standpoint, from a production standpoint, everything, it's not close. The Bengals have the better 1-2 punch, but they have to play like it. And the one thing that I want to see, and I'm curious to see, can you generate some big plays, some explosives? Maybe that's Yak. Maybe that's just go balls. Maybe that's a post. Maybe that's Hurst over the middle or Boyd. I don't know. but you want to see some big plays. And these skill guys, we talk a lot about Joe Burrow. He's got to play big in these moments, right? Well, so do all of these skill guys. And you can't have some of the drops that we've seen in recent weeks or the 50-50 balls that, they might be true 50-50 balls to some receivers in the NFL. Well, the Bengals don't have some receivers. They have the receivers, right? The dudes. And these dudes got to go out and make plays. And that's why everyone's talking about, man, how much is T going to make this offseason? And man, paying Jamar's going to be a lot. And it's because they're studs. And so you need your studs to go out there and be studs. And I think they will. I think that they will, regardless of the elements. That's a big part of it too, by the way. Jamar Chase has never played in snow, ever. Didn't see snow until he came up here, he said. And we know he was drafted in 2021. So that part will be unique. But would you want to guard Jamar Chase in snow? I wouldn't. I think that would be tough. So if there is snow on the ground, I think that might give him a little bit of an edge.
Doesn't sound like there's going to be a ton, if there's any. Might be slick, though, out there, if it's snow and rain.
I hope it's not rain. Ugh.
Players would have preferred snow, but if it's warm enough, then it'll obviously be rain. But either way, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a ton. T. Higgins, happy birthday. Turned 24.
Ooh, old man T. Old man T.
It's absolutely nuts to me that T. Higgins
24.
is 24 and Jamar's still 22. Hasn't turned 23 yet.
It's crazy. They're babies.
Are very good for how young they are. I mean, I guess that's a receiver position. They're getting better at younger ages at that position. But you're right, James. Those two guys are going to have a big impact on this game. Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine, Hayden Hurst all contribute, right?
I think Perine's a big one. I think you hit on that one. I think Perine's a big one this week.
Especially if they're going to open things up in the passing game and they need some protection.
Yep.
Right. Where Joe Mixon got run over last week, leading to one of Joe Burrow's sacks, could lean into Perine a little bit. They've kind of gotten away from that as Joe Mixon's been back in the lineup, the longer he's been back in the lineup. But those guys will contribute. They're your first down, your meat and potatoes, your between the 20s guys. They're not your big play guys. And the Bengals have been kind of missing that big play lately. And I don't think that's on Joe Burrow. No. I think that part of that's the defenses that they've been playing against, and part of that is these receivers having opportunities to make plays down the field and not quite converting them and being really, really close. I guess in week 18, some of it was Burrow. He missed some of those throws. Anyway,
that game was so weird.
That
game was so weird, and that's like such an outlier from what we've seen over the past month and change.
Yeah. Hoping this is a nice game for T, though, for sure. Like getting back to hopefully see DeMar Hamlin before the game if he's able to attend the game. Hopefully that's a little bit of a psychological boost for T. Higgins, and I'm really guessing at his psychological state. But if it is a boost, regardless of where his state is, and it helps him play better, that would be welcome.
I think he's fine.
I do think he's fine.
I think, I think now it's more, they're just so worried about football. Like just listening to Burrow answer the question on Wednesday, T was asked about it, and he was like, yeah, hopefully I get to see him and we can chop it up and laugh, and that's it. And we'll see. I do. If I had to guess, I'd say he'd be there, but I don't know for sure. It sounds like he's been in there in the facility on and off all week long. So it's a big game, but we'll see. Hopefully he is. That would be cool. But as far as on the field, it's fair to say that these, the skill guys, they've had up and down games over the past, let's just go 5 weeks, right? Up and down. And, Jamar Chase's fumble against New England and a couple catches there, here and there from those guys all the way back then to now. You can't have any more of that. This needs to be locked in mode, because the magic number to me is 30 plus. And shocker for those that have listened, if you don't get to 30, well, I don't want you knocking on the AFC Championship door. If you get to 30, well, now the bouncer's going to answer, and you're going to have a real shot to show your ID and get into that AFC Championship room. But outside of 30, I mean, that's the age, right? If you're 28, well, you're too young. You ain't getting in Bengals offense. So they have to find a way to get to 30, and that might not be enough, but that's the minimum requirement in my mind.
I will just say this. In their 3 victories against the Kansas City Chiefs, they eclipsed 30 points only once, which was in the regular season last year, 34-31. The other 2 games, 27-24. So that being said, the defense has something to say about all this as well. So we should talk about some of those little bits. In addition to, I didn't hear your prediction. Let's reaffirm your prediction going into this game to finish up the show next.
But first, a word from Built Bar. Andrew Whitworth talked about this week his little skinny jean legs. Well, if you don't want little skinny jean legs like Andrew Whitworth, you need to get Built Bars in your life, because then you go to the gym, you take place in leg day, you get it done, and then you need to recover. And maybe you're not a gym goer and you're just looking for a healthy snack as you bounce from one meeting to another. Well, Built Bar is for you too. What is Built Bars and what are they? Well, they're high in protein, they're low in sugar, they're low in calories, and they're a protein bar covered in 100% chocolate, real chocolate. They taste amazing, and you're going to love them. And whether you go to built.com to place your order, or, well, you can head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars, or if you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with their hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You could thank me later. You've heard me talk about it for years now. Built Bar is the #1 protein bar on the planet.
Years of Built Bar. All right, James, defense has something to say about this game on the Bengals side of the field as well. They've been a good team this year on defense. We've talked about Lou Anarumo getting potential head coaching opportunities because of what he's done, especially against really good quarterbacks. That's where he tends to shine the brightest.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen it against Patrick Mahomes several times. So when you talk about 30 points, I think I'm inclined to agree with you that likely a 30-point performance could be required the way the Bills go on offense. But can the defense contribute to that 30-point total?
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love that question, because I'm not really concerned about how many punts the Bengals forced this week, which is a weird thing to say. Can you get 3 turnovers? Because I think they'll force some punts, but they're going to give up points. In my head, I just assume that the Bills are going to find ways to do that. But if you force 3 turnovers, that's the ultimate equalizer. And that's the ultimate, all right, well, I don't expect Joe Burrow to turn the ball over. And if the offensive line lets him down a bit, well, he's going to find a way to not turn it over so Drew Chrisman can punt it back to the Bills. And that's where I look at this defense, and it's like, yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to stop Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, and Dawson Knox has scored in 5 straight games now, I think it is, extended his streak last week. All of those things, I get it. Isaiah McKenzie's a good player. But if you find a way to force a couple of turnovers, that's going to change things. And then the other part of this, all the talk about the Bengals offensive line. This Bills offensive line isn't some world-beating offensive line. The Bengals at full strength were, to me, a much better offensive line compared to what the Bills are going to put out there on Sunday. And so I give the edge, I guess, to the Bills offensive line a bit, but it's not like it's some crazy, Dawkins is probably the best of the group. And I don't mean Bills, I mean of the offensive linemen starting in this game. But outside of that, I think it's pretty close, and I think that the Bengals defensive line should be able to put some heat on Josh Allen as well.
The Bengals defensive line is probably better than this version of the Bills defensive line. And if the offensive lines are similar, then, Trey Hendrickson coming around the edge. Joseph Osai has been winning in the pass rush at a high rate. This is going to be a big game for him to step up and get some additional playing time. DJ Reader and BJ Hill have been really good compressing the pocket inside. And you're right. I mean, over the course of the season, the Bills and Josh Allen's been under pressure 35% of his dropbacks, as charted by Pro Football Focus. Joe Burrow, that's 26.5%. That's about 6% more pressured dropbacks for Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen, when he's pressured, has the highest PFF grade. I heard Sam talking about this on the PFF preview today. Highest grade under pressure in the NFL. He has completed just 51% of his passes, but 14 touchdowns when under pressure against just 5 interceptions, 8.1 yards per attempt under pressure. Actually throws for more yards per attempt under pressure than when he's not under pressure. But he does put the ball in danger often. And it's not just picks. It's fumbles too. He has a real fumble problem this year. And I'm thinking about, Trey Hendrickson. He loves to go for that chop to get that ball out coming from the blind side.
No doubt, right? That's huge. And I agree. I think that's the turnover part of this it's got to be on the Bengals' minds, especially with how well they've been playing from a turnover standpoint. I mean, during this win streak, looked it up today with at least Jesse and I, we were looking at 16 turnovers in the 9 games. And that was with 2 games with 0 turnovers forced against the Steelers and who they play after the Steelers. Those 2 games, or maybe it was Carolina and Pittsburgh. Either way, 2 games, they didn't force any turnovers and they still have 16 over this streak. And
Tennessee was the next week. Does that
Tennessee,
help?
Yeah, because Tennessee, they did not force a turnover. They won, but they didn't force one. So there you go. So Pittsburgh, Tennessee, they didn't force a turnover, and they still were able to hit that mark. But the other thing, the Josh Allen number, the contain part of it for the defensive line.
They've been great at it.
And you need that to continue because the reason his number is so high is because he's able to get that extra step or slide or run outside, and then he pushes that ball downfield because he can throw off platform. But if you make him uncomfortable and contain him so he can't get outside the pocket and see downfield with his, giant rocket arm, that's the other aspect of this too.
Huge disparity in how much these quarterbacks have been blitzed this season and what you would expect to see from them getting blitzed in this game. Joe Burrow blitzed 18.6% of his dropbacks. Josh Allen blitzed on 29.3% of his dropbacks. Miami blitzed him, felt like that entire game in the wild card round. And Josh Allen's average depth of target was like over 15.
It was crazy.
I want to say late in the game with the lead because Miami just kept blitzing. And they hit on some of those plays. They also turned it over on some of those plays. Going to be very, very interesting to see what Lou Anarumo's plan is for Josh Allen. Also going to be interesting to see, what the Bills' plan is for Joe Burrow. They've been talking about, they being Bills fans who grind a lot of film and have access to true media, I think, because they have splits on Joe Burrow passing against 8-man coverage shells, drop 8, which we've talked about the Bengals doing to guys like Patrick Mahomes, and we're considering that they'll probably do to Josh Allen a little bit. Joe Burrow has some of the worst numbers in the NFL against drop 8. So they're all excited for the Bills to start dropping 8 the whole game. We'll see what the approach is from both of these teams. I feel like the Bengals are going to send some blitzes, right? Seems like something that they dial up consistently regardless, no matter who they're playing. They blitz Mahomes a little bit. They blitz Brady a little bit. They're going to pick their spots and capitalizing on those opportunities. I've said it all week, James, and this is a very simplistic way to look at it, is if the Bengals can protect Joe Burrow well enough for the Bengals to run their offense and Josh and take care of the ball, and Josh Allen doesn't take care of the ball, or how well he takes care of the ball, likely, to me, feels like the biggest swing factor in this game.
Yep. No doubt. I think that's going to determine it. If Josh Allen plays the way he did last week, good luck, right? Good luck, Buffalo, because that's just going to be a lot to overcome. Flip side, if Joe Burrow plays or this offense, because I think Burrow was good, if this offense plays the way they did this, well, I don't think that's really possible. Now they may have turnovers or mistakes, but I don't think you're going to see that style because stylistically it's just so different between the Bills and Ravens. And I trust that Burrow's going to figure it out. Might not get off to the hot start that he did it in week 17. They've really been slow starters in, a lot of these playoff games, just in general. And, against Tennessee, they got out to the big lead last year, but AFC title game, we saw that. Super Bowl, we saw that. And they've always settled down and gotten back into the game. I don't think that'll necessarily be the case. I think they'll be up for it. I think they're just more mature now than they were then. This is going to be a hell of a game, Jake. It really is. Should I give you my prediction? You have any other thoughts?
My thoughts are, like I said at the top of the show, I feel the same way about this game as I did the last time these teams played. Obviously more on the line, obviously a different location, obviously some injuries have happened, but I see two offenses that are really, really good. And I see defenses that also, while good, will not be able to consistently get stops on these offenses. So for me, it's, can the Bengals hold up their end of that bargain? I.e., can they execute their offense with 3 backups on the offensive line? Feels like there's an opportunity for that to happen. And how good are the Bills with balancing their proclivity to occasionally turn the ball over with their ability to generate big plays? Red zone defense, I think, another massive part of this game. But and those factors just make it feel like a coin flip to me. And that's what I said last time the teams played too.
It's a tight game. It's going to be a tight game. It's going to be one of those games where I probably have 6 different game stories that could go 8 different ways. And I'm piecing it together from my Word documents to my actual article as things go. And I'm copying and pasting from the Word document to the article. And then I switch the headline and go back and forth and have 8 different pictures for how the game's going to go. And you get the point. I think it's going to be a tight contest. Go ahead and bet against Joe Burrow. I'm not going to do it. I've been there, done that. He's been so good during this run. And was he great every single playoff game last year? No. I thought he was really good against the Ravens. And if he plays like that against this Buffalo defense, that could translate to 30-plus points, especially if those skill guys deliver like I think they're going to, even though there are some question marks along the offensive line. I think Burrow plays turnover free, maybe has 1 turnover total. It's hard to just go turnover free week in and week out. And I think Allen turns the ball over 3 times, and that probably is the difference. The other part of this is Money Mac finds out that he's still money, accounts for 10 points, makes 4 extra points, 2 field goals in a tough environment in the cold. And the Bengals, they get it done, 34-31, advance to the AFC title game. And as much as I think it would be cool for Trevor Lawrence and the Jags to come to Cincinnati, I think it will be Kansas City. We'll see on that. And the fun part is we're going to know on Saturday night if that's the case. And so once we know that, then at the conclusion of the game on Sunday, you know where the Bengals would go if they are able to get it done. But I think they do. 34-31, Lou's crew makes 1 more play. Evan channels his inner Money Mac, and Joe Burrow and these skill guys do what they do.
Look, let's just look at history here. Trevor Lawrence never loses on Saturdays. The Bengals never lose to the Bills in the playoffs. And that's all you need to know, right? None of the rest of this football stuff we've talked about and the matchups and the current constitution of these teams matters. You just look at history. And that's how it works, right?
Well, I hope so, because if so, Quinn, my 2-week-old, might be going to an AFC title game. I might hook her up with a suite. My wife and her might just be living that sweet life if there's an AFC title game in Cincinnati, because it's a rare occurrence. So that might have to happen if that's the case.
Would be
our listeners are going to hold me to that, by the way. So that's why I threw it out there. So that way it forces me to do it if that scenario plays out.
It would just be a lot of fun. It'd be great for the city. You would love to see it. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. We will be back with you after the game on Sunday to cover what happens. Could be the game of the playoffs, James. Certainly a very, very exciting matchup coming up this weekend. So if you need more, go check out the crossover from yesterday. Go check out the film review with Mike from a couple days ago. We got into how the players played and how they'll play against Buffalo. Some great preview tidbits in those episodes as well. But that's going to do it for today. And until next time, hoo-day, and have a good one.